stop scrolling. This message is for you. You didn't stumble upon this by accident. God brought you here reason. He knows exactly what you've been struggling with. Doubt, fear, uncertainty. You've been wondering if you're on the right path. You've questioned if you're making the right choices. And maybe, just maybe, you've even wondered if God has forgotten about you. But listen to me. God's plan for your life is unfolding exactly as it should. Even when you can't see it. Even when it doesn't make sense. Even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. You need to hear this message. Every single word. Because this isn't just another video. This is a divine appointment. Stay with me until the very end, because by the time we're done, you'll understand that God's path for you is not only real, it's leading you somewhere greater than you ever imagined. Let's begin. Life doesn't always make sense, does it? You do your best. You make plans. You take steps forward, only to face obstacles, delays, and disappointments. And in those moments, it's easy to wonder, is God really leading me? Does He truly have a plan for my life? Let me tell you something powerful. God's plan for you was written before you were even born. It is not a random series of events. It is not an accident. It is divine. It is intentional. And it is unfolding exactly as it should. The problem is, we often can't see the full picture. We only see fragments, single moments, isolated struggles. But God, He sees everything. The beginning, the middle, and the end. He knows exactly where He's taking you. Think of your life like a puzzle. Right now, you're only holding a few pieces. Some of them don't seem to fit. Some of them feel meaningless. But God has the full picture. And every single piece, yes, even the painful ones, are part of His masterpiece. But here's the key. You have to let go of control. Too often, we try to force our own way. We make our own plans, chase our own dreams, and then ask God to bless them. But what if what He has for you is so much greater than what you're settling for? Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that God's way is better than yours. And the moment you fully trust Him, He will take you places beyond your imagination. So, the question is, are you willing to trust Him? You say you trust God's plan, but what happens when life throws you into the unknown? When fear creeps in, whispering that you are not strong enough, not ready enough. That's where faith is tested. And most people fail. Fear is a liar. It whispers doubts into your mind. It tells you, what if you fail? What if this doesn't work out? What if God doesn't come through for you? And let's be honest, when life feels uncertain, fear is the natural response. You look at your situation, and all you see are the problems, the obstacles, the impossibilities. Or faith. Faith sees something different. Faith sees God's hand even when things seem hopeless. Faith reminds you that even when you can't see the way, God is making one. Let me ask you this. What if the very thing you're afraid of is the exact thing God is using to prepare you for something greater? Think about Peter. When he saw Jesus walking on the water, he had a choice: stay in the boat where it was safe, or step out in faith. And for a moment, he walked on water. But the moment he let fear creep in, he started sinking. That's what fear does. It pulls you under. It drowns out God's voice. It blinds you to His plan. But trusting God means choosing faith over fear. It means believing that He is still in control, even when everything feels uncertain. It means declaring, even if I don't see the way, I know the waymaker. Whatever you're facing right now, don't let fear stop you. Don't let doubt keep you in the boat. Step out. Trust that God is already ahead of you, preparing the way. Because when you choose faith over fear, miracles happen. But here's the real challenge. Not just choosing faith over fear, but actually recognizing when God is speaking. Because what if He's guiding you right now and you don't even see it? One of the hardest things about walking with God is knowing whether you're truly on the right path. How do you recognize when God is leading you? How do you know if you're following His plan or just your own desires? The truth is, God is always speaking. The question is, are you listening? God speaks in different ways. Through His Word, through prayer, through the people He places in your life, and through the circumstances you experience. Sometimes He speaks with clarity, giving you direct guidance. Other times, He speaks through closed doors, redirections, and even challenges. Have you ever experienced a time when you wanted something so badly, but it just didn't work out? At the time, it felt like rejection. But what if it was actually God's protection? See, when you truly surrender to God's will, you have to trust that He knows what's best, and He will guide you step by step. One of the greatest ways to recognize God's guidance is through peace. If you're forcing something, if you're constantly anxious, if deep down something doesn't feel right, then maybe God's saying, this is not the way. But when you're walking in His will, even in uncertainty, there is a peace that surpasses all understanding. Another way God guides you is through the people He places in your life. Have you ever had someone speak exactly what you needed to hear at the right moment? That's not a coincidence. That's God using others to guide you. So today, take a step back and ask yourself, am I truly listening? Am I allowing God to guide me? Or am I trying to do things my way? Because when you truly listen, you will recognize His voice. And when you follow His voice, you will never be led astray. Life can feel overwhelming. We're surrounded by challenges, pain, negativity, and distractions pulling us in every direction. But through every struggle, there's one answer: God. Here on Jesus Daily Blessings, I share messages to guide you, uplift you, and remind you of God's promises for your life. If you want to stay closer to God, subscribe to our channel, and let's walk this faith journey together. You might be asking, but what if I still have doubts? What if I don't always feel confident that I'm on the right path? Good. That means you're human. But it also means you're about to learn something that changes everything. Doubt is the enemy of destiny. It creeps in when things don't go as planned. It whispers, what if you're wrong? What if God isn't really leading you? What if you're wasting your time? And if you're not careful, doubt will paralyze you, keeping you stuck in fear, uncertainty, and hesitation. But here's what you need to know. God's promises do not change just because your emotions do. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. When He says He has a plan for you, He means it. When He says He will never leave you, nor forsake you, that promise stands firm, even when you don't feel it. Life is full of obstacles. The enemy will try to use challenges to make you question God's plan. He will put roadblocks in your path, hoping you'll give up. But listen, every great man or woman of faith in the Bible faced obstacles. Moses had the Red Sea in front of him. Joseph was thrown into a pit and sold into slavery. David faced a giant with nothing but a slingshot. But in every single case, God turned their obstacles into victories. You need to remember the battles you've already won. Think about the moments when God has already come through for you. The doors He opened, the miracles He performed, the times when you thought it was over, but He made a way. If He did it before, He will do it again. Faith is not about never having doubts. It's about choosing to trust God even when the doubts come. It's about pushing through the obstacles, knowing that what's ahead is greater than what's behind. So when doubt tries to creep in, remind yourself, God has never failed you, and He never will. So now you know, doubt doesn't disqualify you. But here's where most people get stuck. They hear God's voice, but they don't act. They hesitate. They delay. And that hesitation, it could be the very thing blocking the blessing you've been waiting for. Obedience isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. Because obeying God means trusting Him when you don't have all the answers. It means stepping forward even when the path is unclear. It means saying yes when everything inside you wants to say no. But here's the truth. Obedience is the key to unlocking God's blessings in your life. So many people miss out on what God has for them because they refuse to take that step of faith. They hesitate. They delay. They wait for things to feel safe or comfortable. But God doesn't call you to comfort. He calls you to obedience. Think about Noah. God told him to build an ark when there was no rain in sight. People mocked him. They thought he was crazy. But because of his obedience, he and his family were saved. What if he had waited? What if he had ignored God's instructions? He would have missed out on the greatest miracle of his life. Some of you are delaying obedience because you're waiting for the perfect moment. You're waiting for confirmation after confirmation. But delayed obedience is still disobedience. When God tells you to move, move. When He tells you to let go of something, let go. When He calls you to step out in faith, step out. Yes, obedience is hard. It requires sacrifice. It requires trust. It requires doing things that don't always make sense. But what's on the other side of obedience? Blessing, favor, divine breakthroughs, supernatural provision. So if God is speaking to you, if He's been nudging you, convicting you, calling you to something, don't hesitate. Say yes. Take the step. Trust that God will handle the rest. Because obedience is always worth it. Obedience is powerful, but let's be real. What about when obedience leads to waiting? What do you do when you've done everything right, but God still says, not yet? Waiting is hard. There's no way around it. When you pray and don't see an answer, when you work hard but don't see results, when you trust God but nothing seems to be happening, it's frustrating. And in those moments, the enemy loves to whisper lies. God has forgotten about you. Your time will never come. Maybe it's never going to happen. But let me remind you of something powerful. God's timing is perfect. Not early. Not late. Always right on time. The problem is, we live in a world that demands instant results. We want things now. But God is not on our schedule. He sees things from an eternal perspective. And sometimes, the waiting season is exactly what we need. Look at the story of Joseph. God gave him a dream of greatness when he was young, but instead of immediate success, he was betrayed by his brothers, thrown into prison, and forgotten for years. But what seemed like a delay was actually preparation. By the time he stepped into his destiny, he was ready for it. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was necessary. Some of you are frustrated because you're in a waiting season. But what if this season is shaping you, preparing you, and developing you for something greater? What if the delay isn't a denial, but a divine setup? Patience is not just about waiting, it's about how you wait. Are you waiting with faith or with frustration? Are you trusting God's process, or are you constantly doubting His plan? Trust this. If God has promised it, He will do it. If He said He would make a way, the way is already being prepared. You just have to hold on, stay faithful, and trust that His timing is always perfect. Waiting is hard, but let me tell you something even harder. Trying to find peace without fully trusting God. Because if you don't settle this in your heart, nothing else will ever be enough. Peace isn't found in perfect circumstances. It isn't found in having everything figured out. It isn't found in getting what you want when you want it. True peace is found in trusting God completely. Some of you are carrying burdens you were never meant to carry. You're stressed, anxious, constantly overthinking, wondering what's next, trying to control things that aren't yours to control. And because of that, you have no peace. But Jesus said in John 14:27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." This means that peace is not something you find, it's something you receive. It comes when you surrender. When you say, "God, I don't have all the answers, but I trust you." It comes when you release your worries and choose faith over fear. You see, worry drains you. It steals your joy. It keeps you up at night, robbing you of the rest God wants you to have. But when you truly trust Him, when you believe that His plan is good, that He is leading you, that He has everything under control, you can finally breathe. So today, ask yourself, am I truly trusting God, or am I trying to control things myself? Because when you trust Him fully, peace follows. And that kind of peace, it changes everything. You're not the first person to struggle with trusting God's plan. Some of the greatest people in history wrestled with the same doubts you have right now. But the way they responded, that's what changed everything. If you ever doubt whether trusting God's path is worth it, look no further than the Bible. God has been proving His faithfulness for generations. And time after time, we see men and women who chose to trust Him, even when everything seemed impossible. Think about Abraham. God told him to leave everything he knew, his home, his family, his comfort, and go to a place that God would show him. Not a place that was mapped out. Not a place with a guarantee. Just go. And Abraham went. He trusted that God's path was better than his own. And because of his obedience, he became the father of many nations. Then there's Joseph. God gave him a dream, a vision of greatness. But instead of stepping straight into his destiny, he was betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and falsely imprisoned. Years went by. It looked like his dream was over. But God was working. Every setback was a sap. Every trial was preparation. And when the time was right, Joseph was elevated to second in command over Egypt. The very people who betrayed him had to come to him for help. God's plan was bigger than Joseph could have imagined. And then there's Jesus, the ultimate example of trust. He came to earth with one mission, to do the will of the Father. And even when that meant facing betrayal, suffering, and the cross, he didn't turn away. He trusted that God's plan was greater than the pain. And because of his trust, Salvation was made available to the world. What do all these stories have in common? They didn't see the full picture, but they trusted God anyway. And in the end, His plan was greater than anything they could have imagined. The same is true for you. Your story isn't over. Your struggles are not in vain. God is working, just like He did for them. The only question is, will you trust Him? You've seen how others have trusted God, but what about the people in your life? What if your faith is the key that helps someone else believe? Your faith isn't just for you. Your trust in God's plan isn't just about your journey. It's about the lives you will impact along the way. Because here's the truth. Someone is watching you. Someone is looking at your life, your choices, your faith, and wondering if they, too, can trust God. Think about the people who have encouraged you. Maybe it was a parent, a pastor, a friend, someone who spoke life into you when you felt like giving up. Maybe it was someone whose faith inspired you even when you were struggling to believe. You had the opportunity to be that person for someone else. Encouragement is powerful. A single word of faith, a simple reminder that God is still in control, can change someone's entire perspective. It can pull them out of doubt. It can reignite their hope. It can remind them that they are not alone. And prayer. Prayer is one of the most powerful ways you can help someone trust God. When you pray for someone, you're standing in the gap for them. You're interceding on their behalf. You're inviting God's presence into their situation, even when they don't have the strength to pray for themselves. Maybe right now, you're thinking of someone who needs encouragement. Someone who is struggling to trust God. Don't wait. Reach out to them. Send a message. Speak life into them. Let them know that God is still working. And more than anything, be the example. Live your life in a way that reflects your trust in God. Because when others see your faith, when they see you trusting God, even in the storms, they'll be inspired to trust Him too. At the end of it all, there's one question that remains. Are you truly ready to embrace the life God has called you to? Because knowing His plan is one thing, walking in it is another. At the end of the day, this is what it all comes down to. God has a purpose for your life. A plan that is bigger than your fears, bigger than your failures, bigger than anything you could ever imagine. But the only way to step into it is to fully trust Him. Maybe you've spent too much time doubting. Maybe you've let fear hold you back. Maybe you've been running from God's path, choosing comfort over calling, choosing safety over surrender. But now is the time to change that. Now is the time to step fully into the life God has prepared for you. You are not created to live in fear. You are not created to drift through life aimlessly. You were created for something greater. And the moment you stop fighting God's plan and start fully embracing it, that's when you'll experience the peace, the joy, and the fulfillment you've been searching for. Yes, the path God has for you might not always be easy. There will be trials. There will be challenges. There will be moments when you wonder if you made the right choice. But hear me when I say this. God's path always leads to something greater. It leads to blessings you never expected. It leads to opportunities you never saw coming. It leads to a life that is filled with purpose and meaning. So today, I challenge you. Make the decision to trust Him completely. Not just with some things, but with everything. Your future, your dreams, your fears, your whole life. Lay it all down at His feet and say, God, I trust you. Because when you do that, when you fully surrender and walk in His plan, that's when your life truly begins. This message wasn't just words. It was a call to action. A reminder that your life is not an accident. That God is leading you. That His plan is greater than you can imagine. But knowing this isn't enough. Now, you must act. I want you to take action. Don't just watch this message. Respond to it. Step out in faith, right here, right now. In the comments below, I want you to declare your trust in God. Write these words: God, I trust the path you have prepared for me. When you type it, you're not just writing words. You're making a declaration of faith. You're speaking life over your future. You're affirming that, no matter what happens, you believe God is leading you to something greater. If this message blessed you, I invite you to sow into this mission of spreading God's Word. As Galatians 6:9 reminds us, let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Your super thanks or membership isn't just support. It's a seed planted in faith, growing to impact lives for His glory. Every gift, big or small, helps bring hope to those who need it most. Be the light. Stand with us. Give in faith and watch how God moves. And if you're facing a difficult situation right now, drop a comment and let this community pray for you. We're in this together. Let's lift each other up, strengthen one another's faith, and stand firm in the truth that God's plan never fails. And one more thing, if this message blessed you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who might be struggling, doubting, or needing a reminder that God's path is always the best path. Trust Him. Declare it. Live it. Because when you do, your life will never be the same. Amen. Please like this video and leave a heartfelt amen in the comments. If you want to stay closer to God, subscribe to our channel.